Jalen Williams is the NBA's most underrated player. So far this season, Jalen has been nothing short of impressive, but especially as of late in the last 10 or so games, Jalen has truly taken his game to the next level, and at this point he's a huge reason why the OKC Thunder are making a legitimate push towards the playoffs. When going into the season, nobody expected the Thunder to be anywhere near this point. But quickly, before we get the video started, for those of you who may not know, I'm Juicy Sports. I make opinion native NBA content, and if you guys enjoy videos similar to this, hit that subscribe button, that like button, and that post notification bell. I also want to quickly mention that I recently started up an MMA channel, and if you guys are interested in that, the link will be in the description. But anyways, let's get into it. Jalen Williams was drafted with the number 12 overall selection during the 2022 NBA draft by the OKC Thunder. And originally when Jalen got drafted, he was seen as a guy that had a bunch of different offensive skills, but teams weren't necessarily sure if he would be able to put everything together, alongside with some questions on whether or not he was a true point guard or a true shooting guard. But once Jalen started to play for the Thunder, he started to quiet a lot of the questions people had about him coming into the NBA. As basically right away, Jalen started to play very well and started to show a lot of the same things that he was doing well in college. Early on in his rookie season, Jalen was showing a really nice ability to drive all the way to the basket and be pretty efficient with that, alongside with having a nice ability with that floater, mid-range jump shot, and even had a pretty decent ability to shoot that three-point shot. But the thing about Jalen and what makes him so impressive to me is as the season progressed, Jalen only got better. And fast forwarding to the last 10 or 15 games, Jalen has really taken the next step in his NBA career, and he's really taken his game to the next level. At this point, Jalen is doing a great job at driving all the way to the basket and being extremely efficient with that. Although Jalen does have a good amount of athleticism, he's not necessarily the most athletic guy out there, but even in lieu of that, Jalen does a great job at finishing around players with crafty layups. Whether you talk about his left or right hand, and he also has a great ability to finish through contact. Now, I would certainly say his three-point jump shot also got better as the year did progress, and at this point I would say he's a very capable shooter from out there. Now, in terms of his mid-range jump shot, he doesn't necessarily utilize it all that often, but he does have a pretty nice one dribble pull-up from that range. And at this point I would say Jalen is a pretty complete offensive player, as we do see a bunch of games from him, when he's putting up 25 plus points and he's being very efficient as well. Now, although I think Jalen is a very complete offensive player, he definitely does most of his damage driving all the way to the basket. Now, similar to his individual scoring ability, as the season has progressed, he's also gotten significantly better in terms of his passing and playmaking as well, and overall at this point I would just say Jalen is a very valuable player to the Thunder and also a positive asset. But now, the question is, where do I see Jalen Williams going throughout the rest of his career, and more specifically in the next 3 or 4 seasons? Well, in my opinion, as I mentioned before in the video, I think Jalen has proven the ability to improve his game as the years do progress. Although he's only in his rookie season, we have seen a pretty nice improvement from the beginning of the year to the end of the year. So in my opinion, I definitely think going forward long term, we're going to see a similar type of growth from him. I think next year he's going to look overall better than he did this year. The season after that, he's going to look even better and just get better and better as the years do progress. Now, I also touched upon the fact that the Thunder are actually pushing towards the playoffs this season. And if the Thunder are somehow able to make the playoffs, I think that would be extremely valuable for any young player, but especially a young point guard like Jalen Williams. I think experience in the playoffs, even if the Thunder lose, which let's be honest, they most likely will, that kind of experience is just going to help all their young players, but especially Jalen Williams as well, and I do think his growth could actually be on a better trajectory if the Thunder do make the playoffs this year due to that experience and growth process that would come from that. But in my opinion, I see Jalen Williams as potentially being a legitimate starting level guy and a borderline all-star. Now, there is a potential he could become even better than that, but I think based upon what we've seen early on in his rookie season so far, I do think it isn't necessarily the most unrealistic expectations to say that this guy could be a borderline all-star in the future based upon how he's been playing. Now, in terms of certain things I would like to see Jalen improve upon, I would definitely like to see him improve upon his three-point jump shot. Although I would say at this point it is decent, of course there is always room for improvement from that, and if Jalen becomes a real knockdown shooter from that three-point range, mid-range, his driving and finishing ability would just be enhanced that much more, and he would just be that much more unguardable than he is currently. Now also, I would like to see him improve upon his passing and playmaking as the years do progress, although that has been something he's been improving upon so far in his rookie year, so I'm not necessarily worried about that. And besides those two specific things, of course you would like to see a general improvement from a young point guard like Jalen, but overall I actually am very happy about what I've been seeing from Jalen so far early on into his rookie season, and actually going forward long term, I do think he has a great future. But now, where do I see the OKC Thunder as a team going forward long term? Well, in my opinion, I see the Thunder as one of the better young teams in the NBA. Of course, everybody talks about this all the time, but they have a ton of draft picks going forward that they can either utilize by drafting players or by potentially trading them away for nice stars to come in return, or maybe even just supplementary guys. So I think solely based upon the amount of draft picks that the Thunder have going forward, they're in a great position. But even besides those draft picks, when you look at the roster, they actually do have a lot of nice young talent on their team right now. When you talk about guys like SGA, Josh Giddey, of course Jalen Williams, and they just have a bunch of other different nice players on their roster currently as well. So in my opinion, I think the Thunder are probably in the best position they possibly could be in. Because at this point, there are little to no expectations on them, but the Thunder are actually relatively competitive at this point as they are competing for a playoff spot. So whatever success the Thunder do have within the next season or two, it's just going to be bonus. People aren't necessarily expecting them to do all that much, but then going forward long term, you would also expect a lot of these younger guys to only get better as time progresses, and you're also going to be adding a lot of nice young talent to your roster, either via the draft or maybe even trading those picks away for nice players in return, as I mentioned before. So I definitely think the Thunder are in a great position, and I don't necessarily think it's the most unrealistic thing to say that I think the Thunder could legitimately compete for an NBA championship within the next 3 or 4 seasons. Now it might sound a little ridiculous at this point considering they're relatively early on into the rebuild process, but when you consider they're actually already competing for a playoff spot, I don't necessarily think it's the most unrealistic thing to say. Because when you also consider the young guys they have on the roster are going to improve, and they're probably going to improve pretty quickly, alongside with the added talent they're going to get within the next 2 or 3 seasons, I don't necessarily think it's that unrealistic to say that. But overall, I am extremely excited to see where the career of Jalen Williams goes from here going forward. I do think he has a great future, as I mentioned, and I think for the OKC Thunder as an organization, I think they position themselves in an absolute perfect spot. But I guess only time will tell what does end up happening for not only Jalen Williams, but also for the OKC Thunder as an organization. But anyways, let me know what you guys think in the comments. Do you think Jalen Williams is one of the more, or maybe even the most underrated player in the NBA, or do you not think so? But anyways, I hope you guys enjoyed the video, and if you did enjoy it, check one of these 2 videos popping up now, and until the next time, peace out guys.